All right, let's talk about a huge paradox that's shaking up the entire retail industry. We've got this technology, AI, right? Everyone's pouring billions of dollars into it, and yet it almost always fails. So what's going on here? Let's dive in.
Okay, let's just start with the number that gets to the heart of this whole thing. Get this. According to a big report from MIT's Project NANDA, a mind-blowing 95% of all enterprise AI pilots fail, as in they deliver zero return on investment. I mean, think about that. That's a massive, colossal failure rate for a technology that's supposed to be, the future.
And that right there, that's the big mystery we're going to unpack. If basically all of these projects are failing, why is a tidal wave of cash still pouring in? I mean, why would a market that's so full of disappointment be projected to more than double in the next 10 years? It just doesn't add up. This is the AI paradox. So, to get our heads around this, we first have to look at the gold rush side of the equation, right? The hype, the excitement, and honestly, the sheer amount of money being thrown around. It's like nothing the industry has ever seen. And just look at the trajectory here. It's pretty wild. We are not talking about small potatoes. The retail automation market is set to just explode from about $32 billion in 2025 to almost $72 billion by 2034. That is a huge signal from investors that they believe this is the future, no question about it. And this isn't some pie-in-the-sky, far-off future stuff. It's happening right now. Just look at this breakdown. 42% of retailers are already deploying AI. Another 34% are in the pilot phase. So you add that up, and that's more than 3/4 of the entire industry already in the game, spending money and trying to figure this out. The race is absolutely on. Okay, but behind that shiny, exciting gold rush picture, there's a much harsher reality, and a much, much more expensive one. This is where that paradox we talked about really starts to bite. So according to that same MIT report, something like 30 to 40 billion, with a B, dollars of investment in just generative AI has produced nothing. Zero. Zilch. That is not a small oopsie. It's a black hole that's just swallowing up capital that was supposed to be building the future of retail. And the folks at MIT, they actually have a name for this problem. They call it the Gen AI divide. And it's exactly what it sounds like. This giant gap between all the cool, exciting experiments you hear about and the cold, hard reality of failing to actually produce any real business impact or, make any money back. So the big question is why, right? What is actually causing pretty much every single one of these ambitious, expensive projects to just crash and burn? Let's start unpacking the main reasons. Okay, so a huge piece of the puzzle is this big strategic mistake called investment bias. Basically, what's happening is that over half of the AI budgets are getting thrown at the flashy, sexy stuff, the visible sales and marketing projects. But the data is crystal clear on this. The real money, the actual ROI, is hiding in the less glamorous back office work. We're talking about things like inventory management, fraud detection, and fixing the supply chain. And it's not just about where the money's going. There are other big problems too. For example, there's something called the learning gap. This is where you take a generic AI model and it just doesn't get the specific details of your business. Then you've got brittle workflows. That's when a new AI tool is just kind of plopped on top of everything else, not connected to the core systems, so it can't actually do anything. And then there's this weird one, the enterprise paradox, which, crazy enough, finds that the biggest companies are often the worst at actually making these projects work at scale. And of course, you've got the usual suspects, data stuck in different departments and just, bad planning for the change. And this really brings up the human side of things. It's not just about the tech. Get this. Over a third of retail executives are worried their own teams don't understand AI. And almost the same number are scared they just can't find people with the right skills. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? You can have the most brilliant AI on the planet, but if your people don't know how to use it, it's totally worthless. All right, enough of the bad news. That's a lot of doom and gloom. Let's totally shift gears here. What about that tiny 5%? The winners. What are they doing differently? What's their secret? Well, this is their playbook. And honestly, the number one biggest lesson is this. The companies that are actually winning are the ones ignoring all the hype. They're not chasing some flashy chatbot demo to show off. Nope. They are using AI like a surgical tool to solve real, expensive, boring operational problems that are actually hurting their bottom line. Let me give you a perfect example. There was this national pharmacy chain, and they decided to tackle a classic unsexy problem: inventory. You know, running out of stuff. They put in an AI system to monitor it, and bam, they cut the number of out-of-stock situations by almost 43%. Think about how huge that is for customer satisfaction alone.
And okay, what does that 43% actually mean in dollars and cents? It meant $12.3 million saved. In the very first year, that's the kind of real measurable result that makes an executive say, okay, let's roll this out everywhere.
So how'd they pull it off? It wasn't some kind of magic trick. It was actually pretty straightforward. First, they didn't just drop the AI in. They deeply connected it with their existing cash registers and warehouse systems. Second, and this is key, they built feedback loops so the people working in the stores could constantly teach the AI and make it smarter. And third, they got the bosses on board to actually retrain their employees. See, it was a whole system, not just a shiny new app.
And look, that pharmacy story isn't just a fluke. Here's another win, this time in fraud detection. Another back office job. The numbers here speak for themselves. Their accuracy in catching fraud jumped from 62% to over 82%. The time they spent investigating was cut by almost 2/3. And maybe best of all, the number of false alarms, when you accidentally block a good customer, just plummeted. Again and again, it's about real, measurable wins.
So after all that, what's the takeaway? What does this actually mean for you or your organization? Let's boil everything we've learned from that successful 5% down into a strategy you can actually use. All right, here it is, the playbook for success. Step 1, take your money out of those flashy marketing pilots and put it into back office automation. Step 2, stop using generic, off-the-shelf AI. Use models that are trained on your company's specific data. Step 3, build it so it's deeply integrated with everything else and has those constant feedback loops. Step 4, you gotta invest in your people, train them up. And finally, step 5, define success with real numbers, like reducing inventory loss, not some fuzzy metric that just looks good in a presentation. And there's one last really crucial tip from that MIT report, and it's a big one. Don't try to be a hero and build everything yourself. The data shows that partnering with outside experts who live and breathe your specific problem, whether that's supply chains or fraud, literally doubles your chances of success. Double. And that really brings us to the final question, the one that really matters. The gap between the 5% who get this right and the 95% who are just burning cash, well, it isn't getting smaller. It's getting wider, and it's getting wider fast. The opportunity here is absolutely historic, but so is the risk of being left in the dust. So you have to ask yourself, which side of that gap is your organization going to be on?